because I started off in stage management before I started directing my own work, I got fascinated by the making of theatre, that like how and what and all the tools that we use. And theatre on the whole has always been striving to use whatever technology is available for it to tell stories. Because essentially that's what we do, is we tell stories, we're storytellers. The trouble is what's happened in the past is that technology has always been either used possibly negatively towards a production because it becomes a bit of a fad. Directors, theatre makers have kind of gone, this is new technology, we should probably be using this to tell our story, and not thinking about the implementation of what that actually means. And it's really only taken, I mean, video projecting especially has been used since the 80s in theatre, but in quite a commercial way. It's taken up until the last couple of years for the technology to develop in a way that means it doesn't slow down our storytelling. And that's always been the problem in theatre, is that as soon as you start getting projectors, videos involved, you're limited by the pace of the creativity of that technology. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is for an actor, let alone a director, to be in the middle of a moment and you're having to wait for a video to load, or that it kills the flow of the piece. And I personally, in my production, especially recently, have started using video technology a lot more in my productions. And I'll show you also a couple of videos of some things that, I mean, the people who are really leading in the way of this, the National Theatre, and they've been really leading the way over the last 10 years in this kind of technology, mainly because they're the ones sitting on the millions of pounds that makes it possible to be able to use this kit. You know, well done to them. But they also have a film studio within their setup, which makes it a lot easier for them to just be able to produce these kind of animations in a very quick and cost-effective way. So I'm going to show you a few different videos that they've produced over the last few years about how they've been using video technology, and then explain a little bit about a couple of productions that I've done recently that's used it as well.
I think the idea of incorporating some sort of projection, possibly animation, had come up early on with Richard and Nick. But I think they had a clear idea that another visual language would help link things in the play and possibly illustrate certain scenes in the play. And it also, for myself, and I think very much from the play and the genre of the play, is that it maintained a certain humour and a lightness of touch about a very serious subject.
The Saxons came again, were followed by the lusty Danes. They fought eternal wars, the ladies loved the conquerors.
What they started playing with that technology is actually kind of interweaving the set design and the video. So as you saw there, they had animations of these characters running down the hill, and as they got to the door, the actors came out of the door as if they were appearing on stage. So this idea of kind of starting to map a 3D environment which a set designer was building with mapping technology and video projections, and starting to dot animations onto it was very exciting. But very expensive. And this is the biggest thing with kind of digital art and technology, is actually animators are worth their weight in gold to theatre companies, and it's something that conversation isn't really happening enough. Animators and videographers who are interested in working in live theatre environments, we need those people to step forward, because they're few and far between actually, because that live and recorded element is still something that's in processing. So that was back in 2009, that production, and that's something then that was really kind of paving the way of using what was becoming, like I said, this digital mapping technology. Then a couple of years later, as another company took that on board, and this is a dreadful BBC article, so it's a little bit cheesy because it's very local news. But I'll play you this because this demonstrates that next step when there was a conversation starting to have. It's like, if you have one set, could you never have to build another one again? If you could digitally map a new set every single time, this is a conversation. Is that the wave of the future?
No one pushes scenery on and off this stage It's a South London theatre which has been kitted out virtually, and it's being run by computers. Computers that create props, that can hide the stage, or create a character's worst enemy.
So here you can see the virtual set mapped back onto the real set. If you look at the bright white lights, these are the series of projectors which are hitting the walls. We're using the projectors in conjunction with all the rest of the lighting rig. So the idea is that it all blends together as a seamless whole.
The seamless whole is actually 5 QuickTime video files playing in sync. Each screen overlaps its neighbours slightly, called edge blending in the trade. It allows the actors to interact with, or be upstaged by, the scenery.
One of the highlights of the show is where Pippin, the hero, fights samurai. And the thing is it's a virtual samurai. They're going to let me have a go at it.
The principles are the same as traditional shadow theatre, and it helps if you know the routine in advance, which I didn't.
Is that this is something that started being developed quite a lot. This idea of using technology to be able to lower costs by kind of going, well, if your door's always in the same place, it doesn't need to always look the same. Especially when it's starting to come to the idea of, well, that means you could you could be anywhere in that environment, because the mapping technology was getting to such a point where you're kind of limitless to your opportunities. And most famously, one of the things when video mapping really came into the fray for people is it was the Queen's Jubilee concert, where they video mapped on the top of Buckingham Palace, and and what that was dozens and dozens of projectors which are manipulated in 3D to kind of go with the curves of the building that lot, and they made, and everybody went, this technology, this is the way of the future. Try telling that to all the carpenters and builders and everybody else in the theatre trade, and obviously there was a small wave of panic. The trouble is that no designer will ever design 2 sets the same, ever. If that ever happens, I'd be amazed. And it was this very interesting battle happening back, that was 2012, that theatre started trying that, about this idea of kind of like physical, like real environment tech and the digital tech. There wasn't any of this coalition. Nothing was kind of joining together. It was always one or the other, which started getting me thinking, because I was like, you must be able to use that technology in a way that's positive and forward-looking. But the biggest thing that was happening was that I don't feel like people were using their technology because they needed it to tell the story, and that's the biggest thing. If you're sitting down to put on a play, and you're doing a play, you're doing The Crucible, for example, is the first thing you think of going, well, we should probably use some video projection in there somewhere, because that would be cool. Well, probably not, because that's not useful to tell that story, because it's, because it's a traditional piece that can be done in a very traditional way. So, a couple of years back, I did a production that we took to the Edinburgh Festival called Error 404, and it was all about the internet. And obviously, there had to be, that was about technology, essentially. It was about how technology and the internet and social media was affecting young people's lives. And what we talked about was a devised piece that I devised with a group of young people, and it was all about perspective. So the idea was, when you're online and you show yourself online, you're only showing one part of yourself. You're not showing the other sides of the facets of your personality. And we were trying to discuss ways of physically representing that. So what we had in this production was a live video feed. And you can see down here, James had a camera that was plugged into a projector, and everything that was happening on stage was being projected onto this back wall, and we could manipulate that image in any way we could to make it look like it was coming through different ways. We've got another image here. So, as you can see, this is the stage. In the back, we've got a close-up of Tyler here, the actor, who's putting a funny face. I can't remember what that moment was in the play. So kind of that use of live video feed and stuff. The reason it worked is because that was the whole point of the play. That's what the story was about, and that was the biggest thing that we got excited by, because this technology aided the story. At no point did it try and detract from it. We weren't doing it because we happened to have a camera and a projector and we thought it'd be fun. And actually there was points in the rehearsal process where we were kind of going, we were always asking that question, is this superfluous? Is there a point to this? Is it aiding the story? Is it advancing the story in any way? Because if it was anything else in theatre and it was slowing the story down, you'd get rid of it. Trouble is, the investment that goes into the kit to put it in your show is so great that you get a fear, you get this kind of like, oh, we can't get rid of it, it costs X amount of money. And that's where the mistakes start happening. And what we actually did with that production is we pre-recorded some bits here. So there was this moment where each character would knock a video of their door, their actual house door came on the screen, and the actor would knock on their own door, and then we had a video so that themselves answered that door, and then we went into their house. And then this is Ben, having been pre-recorded, looking down at Beth and telling her something. And so we started kind of playing with that idea of video, because it was about going into their real world and all that kind of stuff. So, and that was it. So that story was dedicated to this world and this idea of technology being something that affects our everyday lives. And to take the audience on a journey using that technology made it a much more profound experience for them. Subsequently, it got such a good reaction, we turned it into an actual feature film, which is being used in schools now to promote internet safety and things. And I think actually that was a result of when people were coming to see the show. They were saying that as hard as some of the stuff was, the character of Beth attempts suicide in the production because she's being bullied online, essentially. And when she was in that moment, we stuck the camera right in her face and had it massive behind her. And the audience, they couldn't not look at her. As much as you don't want to, you put that image up on the screen behind her, and they were saying that was one of the most powerful things. And again, so it's using that technology to your advantage. It was really important. And then, kind of with that same live video feed thing, the production we just did last Christmas, Beauty and the Beast, this is where we started kind of diving into that this could be superfluous kind of world of kind of going, well, we've got the projectors and everything, let's see if we can't start kind of easing this into what is a very traditional story of Beauty and the Beast. However, it's not, you can't really see it brilliantly here, but one of these moments we had is we had the camera hidden to one side of the stage. And when Beauty looks into the mirror, she sees her brothers and sisters back on the farm where she comes from, like kind of bitching about her basically, and she gets all upset. So what we could do with this technology is mean that when the brothers and sisters were one side of the stage, the camera was picking them up and then projecting it onto the wall that she was looking at on a different part of the stage. And actually that's a very simple thing to do now. That's a live video feed, projector in the right place, make sure the cast is standing in the right place. It's one of those moments which was one of those really beautiful kind of wow moments from the audience. And that kind of confirmed to us, okay, it was doing that thing. What that was doing was aiding the story. Kind of alongside those kind of moments is we also, in the show, we also had these two big video walls. So we had an opportunity to be able to kind of be a bit more filmic with it. So the opening was the ensemble on stage, and when they, can't remember the opening lines, something about hope, and then this is a story about love, and we had like a Beauty and the Beast come across, like you'd imagine they'd do the graphic opening for Lord of the Rings, with all, you know, big musical sting and all that kind of stuff to kind of vamp up the energy of the piece. And this kind of like subtle input into what we're doing artistically is something that we're really playing with, and it's actually something that now we've got the kit. Those projectors we were using were just projectors that were on the ceiling in our conference rooms at the point, that we took off the ceiling and put into the theatre. So they weren't like super expensive projectors, they were run-of-the-mill projectors. The technology we used was a piece of software that most theatres use called QLab, which is a sound and audio and video piece of software which allows you to play cues. But what QLab can also do is you can manipulate the shape of an image, so you can project onto non-flat surfaces as well, so you can physically kind of manipulate the image. And we got a box, a splitter box, can't remember the name of it now, which basically means you can have one output on your Mac and project to up to 8 projectors, 8 different images, and it's just like a box that does that for you. And now we've got that technology, we can start really exploring different ways of using it. Now, kind of currently the most kind of up-to-date and kind of forward-thinking use of this kind of video projection technology is a show that's at the National at the moment called Wonder.land, which is their version of Alice in Wonderland. Now I'm going to show you the trailer and then also they've made a little video about the animation in that, so you can get a sense of what they were trying to make.
I hate being me. I hate it. I totally, utterly hate being me.
www.wonder.land.
I'll be a different girl.
www.wonder.land.
Let's give us grab a whirl.
www.wonder.land.
As far as I can go from the Alice that I know. Erase me. Go on, chuck me in the waste.
So, who do you want to be?
I've got a notion for eyes like the ocean. See what this golden blonde can be. Let nothing correspond to me.
Dot!
They jump between the real world, I think they explain this in a minute, and kind of the virtual world. Every time it's in Wonderland, they do lots of this animation stuff. I'll show you the kind of the short documentary they made about that animation process.
Wonderland is a new musical based on Alice in Wonderland and is about young girl Ali who disappears into another wonderful world through her mobile phone. There are two worlds within Wonderland that we're creating. There's the real world and then there's Wonderland.
The video is really important to create that contrast. The real world is made in a sort of very analogue, black and white, sort of handmade way. And then as soon as we transition in, we're sort of in this Technicolor, computer-generated landscape.
This project utilizes a much wider range of different technology. There were live action shoots, there were motion capture, there were visual motion capture, building and designing and texturing a full 3D character.
There's a lot of to and fro between all the different departments, and so what we're doing here informs what happens in the props department and vice versa.
The character of the Cheshire Cats is this interesting shape-shifting, omnipresent, sort of godlike MC character, and there's a fluid transition between the actor playing him on stage and the projected cat.
We started off just basically with a classic Cheshire Cat look where you only ever see the eyes and the grin. On one hand, you want to make it recognizable, but you always want to create something which is new and unseen.
Because the Cheshire Cat sings a whole musical number that lasts about 4 minutes, we wanted something that was closely lip-synced. A model was made and then we captured the facial motion capture of Hal singing. So the model's facial expressions sort of take on the way Hal chooses to embody that character.
So then once we have all of the completed animation files, the next step is building those onto the stage. So we program those into the media server, and then it's this balance between the lighting and the staging and syncing that up with the live music.
I think some of the design is really difficult to distinguish, whether it's costume, whether it's video, whether it's set design. There's been a lot of to and fro and collaboration between all those different people.
I'm quite curious to see it myself. When you're in this process, you hear about all these little disparate elements that are happening around. And then when we go there to Manchester, that's the first time all of these things come together.
It's really exciting how video is used to tell the narrative in some ways and to find sort of visual tricks of how the video world can become the on-stage world.
It's been a brilliantly collaborative process. Working with Rufus, who really understands the potential of what video and theatre can do and really understands how to make that work with as part of the process and the support that we need in order to make the video really fly.
The interesting thing is, and obviously that is used as an advertising tool, industry-wide, reviews-wide, actually, there's been a lot of criticism of that show because of exactly what I was saying earlier. Everyone's like, it looks amazing, the music's very cool, but they've clearly gone, we want to do a show with loads of video in it, and here's the music. And most of the reviews and the feedback is, it's still not coalescing. that actually the video projection looks amazing, it's not serving the story. In fact, sometimes it's a bit distracting. In fact, there's, like they said, there's a 4-minute song in there which is sung by the Cheshire Cat, which is an animation. So there's people saying, I don't know, should it just be in the cinema? Is that cinema? Is that theatre when you spend 4 minutes not looking at anybody live on stage? And so it's kind of reinvigorated that debate, which is quite interesting because Rufus Norris, the new artistic director of the National Theatre, has the ability to create that spectacle of a show, and you can't deny that. But whether or not that's aided the story is still a big question, and people really aren't sure. And what's interesting with that is that I think with something like Alice, the story, which can do that thing beautifully, and you can kind of go wherever your head takes you, the technology allows those creatives to go there. You could never have had a 30-foot Cheshire Cat animated in front of you if it wasn't for that technology. And the very fact that technology is allowing creatives to be able to make those kind of choices is remarkable and exciting. And it's the kind of thing people have been able to do in film for years. Now that's starting to eke its way into theatre is very exciting. But I think the wrong conversations are being had. I think technology companies are going to theatres and saying we've got this, and theatre companies are taking it. I don't think at the moment people are yet going, I've got a story, we need this technology to tell it, and that's where we need people to take more risks in producing things that have those kind of collaborations. And also and people are starting to do it now. There's a show that's about to tour Europe that was in Edinburgh last year that used an app which meant the audience could vote for things to happen in the show, and those votes, it was about democracy and stuff, but they were voting on this app that they downloaded, and the results came up on the app. On the wall from this app, and that it kind of informed sort of decisions in the show. So kind of using those technologies is really interesting. Again, the knockoff of that was slowing down the performance. Just imagine in Edinburgh I think they only had an audience of 75 people, but to be able to build a narrative and then say, right, vote. And you're losing your audience straight away. So I think there's exciting things happening, and I think we're right on the edge of it. And especially, just the last thing I'll just show you quickly, and this is happening a lot more in dance theatre, is the use of actually KINECT technology on Xboxes to actually be, which is essentially an eye plugged into a computer, and the people's movement can manipulate image. And I'll just open this up and play this. This is literally companies thinking slightly more out of the box. This company actually used KINECT sensors. They got a load of Xbox KINECT sensors, got the right technology guys together to create the opportunity to be able to do this kind of work. But this is the stuff that people are using in multi-sensory spaces for young people and things like that. You see this technology being used. To apply it into the arts is like I said, is a very exciting thing to start doing. Just to kind of wrap up from my point of view, kind of because Marcus alluded to it earlier, is a lot of the work I do when I'm not creating work is our creative learning work, and it's then using technology to aid in that is something that's growing. We're working on a project at the moment that we're going to be piloting in the summer, which we're working with a company in the Tech Hub actually to develop an app in which basically we will go into schools and they will write stories. Well, there will be a story of Beavis, of Hamilton, and there'll be 10 holes in that story that we will work with young people to kind of fill in the gaps. So they'll write their own version of these sections of the story. These sections of stories will all be put into this app, and then it's going to be like a story shuffler. So press a button, and it will randomly generate those 10 sections written by all these different kids. So you'll never read the same version of the story twice. And it's about getting kids into libraries. So for them to be able to unlock that app, they're going to have to go to their local library, and there'll be a physical kind of like course to go around the library to find the code to unlock the app. So the idea is that using technology, young people are always on their tablets and things anyway. They're already doing that. So to kind of give them the challenge of saying, write this story, it gets put into this app, and if they like randomly generate them, they're part of the story it will tell. So those kind of things is something that we're kind of using a lot of and getting really excited by. And it's just kind of, again, it's about getting the people in the room together. I think it's the most important thing. And ultimately, all theatre is about relationships, whether that's a relationship between two actors, between an actor and his audience, the creative team. It's nurturing those relationships and getting people excited about telling stories and using their knowledge of storytelling to tell bigger stories is, I think, something that can be very exciting, and at the moment is still something that's growing. I'm going to stop there because you've ingested a lot of information. But both myself and Marcus will be around if anybody has any further questions.